If you stood on a flak position in the Second World War, you would understand immediately why more than 80% of these crews were killed. The gun sits in the open, no roof, no walls, nothing to protect you. The moment you fire, a bright flash and a column of smoke rise into the sky, and you can almost feel the Allied bombers turning toward you. They always go for flak first. To them, your position is the only thing that can threaten the mission. And even if the bombs miss, fragments, shockwaves, and falling debris still rip through the pit. This is the real reason flak crews died in such huge numbers. Their positions were never meant to keep them alive, and you would not have survived there either. The first light of early morning spreads across a field on the edge of a German city. The ground is cold and hard, shaped into circular pits where flak guns sit waiting for the sound of incoming engines. The crews move quietly as they prepare the guns. Some wipe frost from the metal. Others check ammunition crates. Everyone knows what happens once the first shot is fired. Every man here has seen crews disappear in seconds. The war is not an equal contest. The air above belongs to the bombers, and the gunners know they are about to reveal their position the moment the cannon opens fire. A distant rumble grows from the western horizon. At first, it is only a vibration under the boots of the crew standing near the gun. Then, the sound becomes steady, familiar, and unmistakable. It is the roar of a heavy bomber formation from Britain. The crews have learned to recognize this sound even when it is still miles away. They feel pressure building in their chests. They understand that once they begin firing, their gun pit will turn into the brightest and loudest point on the ground. It will guide the bombers straight toward them. The commander of the battery moves between the gun positions. He checks angles, ammunition belts, and elevation wheels. There is no shelter here. No roof, no reinforced bunker. Only a shallow ring of dirt around each 70mm or 88mm gun. These positions were built quickly in the early years of the war when the threat from the air seemed manageable. By 1943, the skies have changed. Bombers no longer come in small groups. They arrive in large waves that stretch across the horizon. Each wave has a single goal: remove the flak guns that stand between the bombers and their targets. When the engines grow louder, the crews take their places. The loaders grip ammunition shells with both hands. The gunner presses his eye close to the sight. Everyone moves with practiced rhythm because they know hesitation can cost them their lives. The moment the first gun fires, a long burst of white smoke shoots upward, followed by a bright orange flash. To men on the ground, it is simply a cannon doing its job. To the bomber crews, above it looks like a flare marking an exact location. A few seconds later, the gunners hear the change in the engine tone of the bombers as they begin adjusting course. The sky suddenly fills with small black puffs as the shells explode around the formation. The gunners keep firing because that is their duty. They cannot run, they cannot hide. Their bodies are exposed on all sides except for the thin dirt wall that barely reaches their knees. Every round they fire makes their position even more obvious. The vibrations shake their teeth. The smoke burns their eyes. Yet, they continue sending shells upward, hoping to create a barrier of explosions strong enough to disrupt the incoming wave. High above, the bomber crews see the pattern of bursts forming below them. By training, they identify the center of the firing. The center usually means a gun pit or a cluster of guns. The pilots adjust altitude and open bomb bay doors. The flak crews hear the metallic rattle echo down from the clouds. Many of the men have heard it before. They know it means bombs are falling. The bombs are not aimed at the city yet. They are aimed at them. For a few seconds, the ground is silent except for the guns still firing. Then the first bomb strikes the field. The shock wave lifts loose dirt into the air. Fragments whistle past the crews. They crouch behind the tiny lip of the gun pit, although they understand it will never save them from a direct hit. Another explosion follows, this time closer. A pile of ammunition crates is thrown into the air. Wooden splinters fall back to the ground, along with metal shards from the bomb casing. The crews continue firing because the formation is still overhead. More bombs fall in a steady rhythm. The explosions begin forming a circle that tightens around the gun positions. Some crews try to shift their guns or pull ammunition crates out of the danger area, but movement is limited. The noise is constant. Dust fills the air. Men shout instructions, though their voices are swallowed by the roar of detonations. No one knows which bomb will be the one that lands directly on the pit. The fear is not about pain or injury. It is about the knowledge that survival is controlled entirely by chance. The bombers finally pass overhead, and the sound fades toward the east. The last few shells burst in the sky, but the guns fall quiet. The field looks different now. Smoke rises in thin columns. Pieces of metal lie scattered across the soil. One gun is still intact, but several others are destroyed. Some pits are empty. The crews examine the scene, and the silence feels heavier than the exploding bombs moments earlier. They know more waves will come. The first engagement has ended, and already the next one is forming far in the distance. The next afternoon brings a very different kind of pressure. The crews gather around their guns again, but the mood has changed after the morning bombardment. Many positions are still damaged. Craters cover the field, and bits of metal from shattered guns remain buried in the soil. The men stand among the wreckage and understand that the enemy has begun to adapt faster than they can repair anything. The bombers now learn from every engagement, and each time the flak guns open fire, the response from above becomes faster and more precise. In the early years of the war, the crews fired, knowing the bombers struggled to find exact positions through clouds or smoke. By 1943, those difficulties fade away. New tactics and new formations appear overhead. The British and American Air Forces fly in larger groups, with Pathfinder aircraft guiding entire waves. These aircraft release bright markers and use advanced navigation equipment. To the flak gunners on the ground, the result feels like the sky has gained eyes that see in every direction. As the crews repair the ammunition feeder on one of the guns, the low hum of engines returns. It is softer than before, almost like a distant storm approaching. The men flatten their hands on the gun barrels to steady themselves and confirm the direction of the vibration. It grows stronger with each passing second. They look at one another without speaking, yet the meaning is clear. The bombers are coming again, and they are coming with knowledge gained from the earlier strike. The formation arrives high above the field. The sunlight glints off the wings of dozens of aircraft. They hold a steady line across the sky, tightening their spacing as they prepare to pass over the defenses. The flak battery commander signals for readiness. The crews load shells into the breaches and check their elevation once more. Each man settles into position with tense focus. The guns are about to open fire, and once they do, the chain of events will unfold exactly as the bombers intend. The first shells scream upward. The familiar pattern of black bursts forms around the approaching aircraft. To the gunners, the bursts mean hope. They imagine the explosions forcing bombers to change course or break formation. But this time, the reaction above is almost immediate. The moment the puffs appear, pilots adjust their headings with smooth movements. They have trained for this. They expect the flak to show them where to aim their bombs. The sight of exploding shells becomes a guide, not a deterrent. Inside the formation, several bomb bay doors swing open. The crews on the ground cannot hear the mechanism, but they sense the shift in danger. A few seconds later, small dark shapes begin falling from the aircraft. They move slowly at first, then faster as gravity pulls them downward. The bombers aim not at the city, but directly at the center of the flak pattern. The guns continue firing because the crews know the bombs have already been released. They have no chance to escape the impact zone. Their only task now is to send as many shells into the sky as possible before the ground erupts. The first bomb hits a nearby gun pit. A burst of soil and smoke rises into the air like a wave. Men from neighboring pits feel the shock in their legs. Fragments cut through the air. Shards hit the barrels of the guns and spark off the metal. The crews continue working because they understand that stopping would offer no protection. The bombs fall in a chain, one after another. The pattern is too precise to be accidental. The bombers concentrate their drops on the exact region where the shells originate. A direct hit lands at the center of the battery. The explosion flattens the sandbags and overturns a gun carriage. The men in the surrounding pits feel the heat from the blast. They do not look at the fallen position for long. Their focus returns to the sky because the attack is still underway. More bombs descend. Some explode on impact while others burst above the ground, scattering deadly fragments across the field. The crews huddle deeper into their pits, yet their hands remain on the controls. The guns shake as they fire upward. A cloud of dust covers the area. Vision becomes difficult. Even through the haze, the men continue feeding shells into the guns. Every burst from their cannons adds another layer of smoke that mixes with the dust from the bomb impacts. The atmosphere becomes thick and heavy. Breathing grows difficult. Yet the rhythm of firing does not stop. The gunners understand their efforts may not change the outcome, but they cling to the duty of holding the line until the bomber formation finally moves beyond their reach. When the final aircraft passes overhead, the engines fade like a storm drifting east. The explosions stop. The crews slowly raise their heads above the rim of the pits. The field is scarred with deeper craters than before. 2 more guns are destroyed. 1 pit is empty. Another gun is twisted sideways from the blast force. The survivors gather near the remaining guns and look at the sky as if expecting the next wave to appear without warning. The pattern is becoming clear. The more they fire, the quicker the bombers strike back. The next major raid arrives before the crews have fully recovered from the last one. It is still early in the day, and the field remains covered with smoke from burning debris. A few surviving gunners shovel dirt into damaged pits, trying to rebuild some of the walls. Others drag pieces of twisted metal aside to clear space for ammunition crates. The air has a bitter smell of burned wood and explosives. The men work quickly, but they know their effort is small compared to the destruction that keeps returning from the sky. By 1943, the Allied bombing strategy has entered a new stage. Instead of hitting cities first and defenses later, the bombers focus directly on the flak belts. The logic is simple. A destroyed gun pit cannot challenge the formation. The more flak guns removed, the safer the bombers become. This shift turns every gun position into a primary target. The crews understand they now stand in the most dangerous place on the battlefield. Even infantry in trenches or tanks on the front line face fewer direct hits than flak gunners facing a full bomber group. The sound of engines returns unexpectedly. It is not a gentle build-up this time. The roar descends suddenly, as if the bombers have appeared from a hidden layer of clouds. The gunners freeze for a moment. They were expecting another wave later in the day. Not so soon. The battery commander signals the crews to move to their positions. Several guns are still not repaired, leaving gaps in the defensive circle. The men know that bombers will notice those gaps and adjust their path for an easier attack. A Pathfinder aircraft marks the field with bright flares. The flares drift downward, glowing red against the pale sky. The gunners understand what this means. Their location has been confirmed with high accuracy. The bombers follow close behind, flying in wide formation. The sunlight reflects off the silver wings of the American heavy bombers. They hold a course that leads directly across the flak battery. The timing is perfect. The gunners barely finish loading the first shells when the bombers enter range. Flak guns erupt at once. The ground shakes beneath the recoil. The men struggle to keep their balance as they push shell after shell into the breaches. The smoke thickens immediately, mixing with dust from the damaged pits. It rises in columns that stretch upward like dark fingers reaching for the bombers. The sky fills with bursts, but the formation moves steadily through them, guided by pathfinder markers and radar systems. The gunners hope their fire will cause confusion, yet they watch the bombers maintain formation, proving that the explosions pose little threat compared to what the bombers are about to release. Bomb bay doors open again. Bombs fall in long lines, spaced in a pattern designed to cover entire sections of ground. These patterns are called box drops, and they ensure that anything within the target area will be hit. The gunners know this too well. They have seen pits vanish under box drops in earlier raids. They brace themselves but continue firing upward. Their guns roar, even as bombs begin to strike the earth around them. The first bombs hit the southern line of pits. Dirt, stones, and metal fragments burst outward in all directions. One gun carriage flips onto its side. The crew disappears beneath a wave of soil. Other crews keep firing. Their arms move automatically. The shells fly upward in steady rhythm, even though visibility has dropped to only a few meters. A second wave of bombs lands near the center. The shockwave knocks two gunners off their feet. Dust fills their lungs. They crawl back to their positions, knowing the bombs will not stop until the entire bomb pattern is complete. More bombs descend. Some explode upon hitting the ground. Others use delayed fuses, detonating above the pits and scattering fragments over the entire battery. These fragments rain down like metal hail. They penetrate clothing, equipment, and the thin wooden platforms beneath the guns. The men focus on their tasks even as fragments strike around them. They know that even a single piece of shrapnel can be fatal. The air becomes thick with debris. The noise grows unbearable. It feels as if the earth itself is shaking apart. A massive explosion erupts at the center of the battery. The largest gun pit collapses inward, swallowing the equipment and the men inside. The nearby guns rock violently from the shockwave. Several ammunition crates explode when hit by hot fragments. Flames rise in sudden bursts. The crews beat the flames with their gloves to prevent the fire from reaching the remaining shells. The ground around them becomes uneven as new craters open. Each crater widens the path for more explosions by removing the remaining cover. When the final bombs fall, they land with a crushing impact that sends tremors across the entire field. Then silence slowly descends. The engines grow distant. The last bomber passes overhead and disappears into a bank of clouds. The gunners lower their hands from the controls. They look around in disbelief. Almost every pit is damaged. Some are reduced to shallow depressions filled with rubble. Not a single section of the battery is untouched. The devastation is greater than anything they faced before. The crews gather to count survivors. The losses are severe. Many of the men they stood beside only hours earlier are gone. The battery commander surveys the field, understanding that the next wave will destroy whatever remains. He also knows they will be ordered to continue firing because there is no alternative. Enemy bombers will keep coming. The incoming waves will only increase in size and frequency as the Allied campaign expands. As the bombing campaign intensifies in the second half of 1944, German commanders try to find solutions for the collapsing flak defenses. The crews understand that their open positions are death traps, yet they have no choice but to keep firing. The ground around them is already torn apart by earlier raids. Craters overlap. Sandbags lie shredded. Metal fragments stick out of the earth like jagged roots. The men know that if nothing changes, the next wave will destroy what little remains of the battery. Still, they work through exhaustion to make the positions stronger, even when they suspect these efforts will not help. The first attempts are simple. Crews dig deeper pits, hoping that more earth around the gun will absorb blast pressure, but the soil is unstable. Bombs have already churned it into loose powder. When the men dig, the walls collapse. Hours of effort slide back into the crater. Eventually, they settle for shallow trenches instead of full pits. These trenches barely cover their legs, but the crews accept them because nothing better is possible with the tools and time they have left. Next come the thin metal plates. Scrap from destroyed vehicles is dragged across the field and mounted as makeshift shields. The crews bolt them to wooden frames and angle them toward the sky. They imagine that fragments and heat from near misses might be blocked by this thin barrier. In reality, the plates offer almost no protection. Bomb fragments punch through the metal like it is paper. Shockwaves push the plates inward and send splinters of wood into the pits. Still, the gunners keep working. They believe even a small chance is worth the effort if it means surviving one more raid. Sandbags become the most common solution. Men fill them with dirt taken from crater rims and stack them around the pits in unstable walls. The sandbags are old and often ripped. Some burst while being lifted. Others fall apart when arranged. The crews continue anyway. They build low semicircles around each gun. The circles are uneven and incomplete, but they give the men the feeling of structure, even if only psychologically. They hope that a few extra layers of sand might absorb fragments from above. Higher command also tries to adapt. Orders arrive telling some batteries to relocate their guns after each raid. The theory is that shifting positions will confuse bomber crews and reduce the accuracy of future attacks. In practice, the idea fails quickly. The ground is too damaged, and the guns are too heavy to move far. Crews manage to drag them only a short distance before exhaustion stops them. The bombers still see the flashes when the guns fire, and the new positions offer no extra protection. Sometimes the new location is even worse, positioned on unstable ground that cannot support the recoil. Another instruction tells crews to fire shorter bursts to reduce smoke. The hope is that less smoke will prevent bombers from correcting their aim, but shorter bursts mean less firepower. With fewer shells in the air, the chance of hitting a bomber drops sharply. The crews face a cruel choice: fire more and reveal your position clearly, or fire less and allow the bombers to reach their targets unhindered. They choose to fire more because that is the duty they are sworn to. They know the consequences, but accept them. As the adaptations continue, the enemy improves even faster. Allied bombers carry more accurate navigation tools. Radar operators in the sky can identify clusters of flak positions even through clouds. The Pathfinder aircraft drop markers directly onto the fields. These markers make the German defensive changes almost meaningless. The flares rest in the center of the battery, glowing bright enough to pierce smoke and dust. Every bomber in the formation can see them clearly. The desperate fixes on the ground cannot counter the overwhelming precision from above. Bombing accuracy reaches a new level at the end of 1944. Crews begin experiencing concentrated strikes that follow the exact shape of their defenses. If a sandbag wall surrounds the gun, the bombs land along that curve. If trenches run between pits, the bombs trace the same path. The men notice the pattern and realize the enemy has mapped their positions long before each raid. Their attempts to adapt have only delayed the inevitable. During one raid, a shallow trench fills with smoke before the bombs even land. The wind blows the smoke sideways and reveals the entire gun line. The bombers adjust instantly. Explosions follow in a clean sequence from west to east. The sandbags crumble. The thin metal plates twist into scattered shards. The trenches collapse from the shock waves. The improvements vanish within seconds, proving they never had the strength to survive a serious attack. After the raid ends, the surviving men examine the debris. The ground is littered with broken planks, burst sandbags, smashed metal, and fragments of guns that once stood tall. The trenches are filled with dirt and cannot be used again. The men wipe dust from their faces and understand the truth. Their adaptations did nothing. Each fix was too small for the scale of destruction brought by modern bombing. The next wave will erase whatever they rebuild. By the end of 1944, the rhythm of the air war has changed completely. Bombing raids no longer follow predictable schedules. They arrive at dawn, at midday, at evening, and even deep into the night when the crews can barely see their own hands. The field where the flak battery once stood has become a maze of overlapping craters. The guns that remain operate on damaged platforms. Ammunition is stacked in shallow piles because the storage bunkers were destroyed months earlier. The surviving crews work with a quiet understanding that each new wave may be their last. A cold wind blows across the ruined landscape. The men breathe in ash and dirt every time they lift a shell. They have learned to move carefully across the uneven ground because loose soil collapses easily into the deeper craters. Many of these holes are reminders of positions that once held full crews. Now they hold nothing except twisted steel and burned fragments. Repair efforts feel meaningless, yet the men continue because the enemy bombers will come whether they rebuild or not. The next raid begins without a warning siren. The night sky is silent, and the moon hides behind thick clouds. The first sign of danger is a faint vibration under the earth. The gunners look up, trying to locate the sound, but the sky is too dark. They cannot see silhouettes or shifting shadows. There is only a steady hum that grows louder. The bombers have reached a level of confidence that allows them to approach without fear. They use radar, night navigation tools, and pathfinder illumination to mark their targets long before the flak guns even fire. A pathfinder aircraft releases glowing markers that drift downward through the darkness. The light is soft but steady, painting the field in pale blue and red. The gunners understand what this means. The bombers know exactly where they are. Even before a single flak shell is fired, the position has already been chosen for destruction. The crews rush to their guns, loading ammunition and preparing elevation controls. Their hands move quickly, but their minds recognize the shift in power. They once had the chance to fire first. Now, the enemy acts with perfect information. The guns open fire and flashes illuminate the night. The light from each shot forms brief windows into the shape of the world around them. For a second, the field looks alive again, but darkness returns instantly. The bursts in the sky sparkle far above, their dull glow swallowed by the night. The crews keep firing because they must. The smoke from the guns spreads across the field and mixes with the fog, creating a heavy mist that flows between the craters. Bomb bay doors open above the clouds. The bombs begin falling long before the gunners hear the engines clearly. Heavy objects slice downward through the night air, invisible to the men below. The first explosion erupts at the edge of the battery. A rising column of fire lights up the entire field. The shockwave pushes the men backward. The next bomb detonates even closer. The pattern is unmistakable. This is not random bombing. It is a dedicated strike meant to erase the last remaining flak positions. The explosions arrive in rapid succession. Some bombs burst on the ground, tearing apart what remains of the defensive rings. Other bombs explode in the air, sending hot steel fragments downward like burning rain. The fragments strike the damaged gun shields, the ammunition crates, and the bodies of the men who continue loading shells. The ground feels alive under their boots, shaking and shifting with every new impact. Dust clouds rise and fall like waves rolling across the battlefield. Fires break out around the gun pits. Flames climb up broken planks and scattered debris. The heat becomes intense. The gunners feel it on their backs as they work the controls. They fight, not only the bombers, but also the rising smoke and choking air. The firestorms grow without pause. Each explosion adds more fuel to the burning wreckage. The wind spreads embers across the field, igniting anything that can burn. The bombers continue releasing their payloads with mechanical precision. Their formation moves in layers. When the first group finishes its run, the second group begins. When the second finishes, a third follows. The gunners try to track the shape of the formation through sound alone, but the overlapping engines create a continuous roar that masks direction and distance. They stand exposed, unable to find any shelter in a landscape where every crater is already filled with fire or debris. The guns fire until barrels glow red. Ammunition runs low. One crew attempts to retrieve more crates, but the path is blocked by burning fragments. Another pit collapses when a delayed fuse bomb explodes inside a crater. The shockwave throws dirt high into the air. The heat washes over the remaining crews, leaving them disoriented. When the final bomber disappears, the darkness returns. The raid has lasted only minutes, yet the destruction covers every inch of ground. Smoke hangs low over the field. Flames flicker in broken pits. The surviving gunners gather near the central crater. They look at each other with exhaustion that goes deeper than physical strain. The firestorm has proved something they already feared. The bombers no longer need sunlight, clear skies, or visible targets. Flak positions can be destroyed at any hour of the day. By the beginning of 1945, the front lines of the war have collapsed across nearly every direction. Cities burn for days at a time. Rail stations lie in ruins. Bridges, factories, and power lines buckle under constant bombardment. Yet, the flak crews remain at their guns because the orders never stop. Their positions are no longer clean circles of sandbags. They are broken patches of earth surrounded by crater rims and smoking metal. Every crater holds a memory of a crew that once fought there. Every piece of twisted steel marks a gun that did not survive long enough to fire another burst. The surviving gunners move with heavy steps. Their uniforms are torn. Their faces are coated with soot. Their hands suffer burns from hot barrels and sharp cuts from shrapnel. They barely sleep because sirens rarely sound anymore. The enemy bombers come constantly. Some raids pass overhead without dropping bombs. Others strike with full power and erase entire neighborhoods in a single pass. The crews cannot predict anything. They only know that each time they fire, they reveal their exact location again. A thin winter fog covers the ground. The men gather around the remaining guns and check ammunition levels. Their supply is low. Many of the crates are older than the crews themselves, filled with shells produced in 1942 or 1943. Some shells misfire, others jam. The guns still function, but only because the men clean them after every barrage. They maintain a strange loyalty to weapons that can no longer protect them. The guns have become the final symbol of their duty. The next formation arrives quietly from the north. The engines echo across the sky with a hollow tone that carries through the frozen air. The gunners take their positions. There is no hesitation. The damage around them has removed any illusion of safety. The shallow pits offer almost no cover anymore. Many men no longer bother to crouch. They stand straight because crouching will not change the outcome if a bomb lands directly on the pit. Courage and resignation blend into the same posture. The formation stretches across the sky. Rows of heavy bombers line up with perfect discipline. They cast long shadows over the broken field. Pathfinders mark the target area with pale green lights. The markers drift down slowly and land near the center of the battery. The gunners know the meaning of each glowing dot. The bombers have chosen their position for destruction long before the first flak shell leaves a barrel. The guns open fire. Smoke rises instantly. The vibration crawls up through the men's legs and into their chests. Shells burst high above, but the bombers do not change course. They fly with calm confidence. Their wings remain steady. Their altitude barely shifts. The bombs begin falling in long strings. The gunners see the dark shapes for only a moment before the clouds swallow them. The first explosions tear open the outer perimeter. Debris bursts upward. Clumps of frozen earth fly across the pits. The second wave lands closer and shatters one of the last functioning guns. The crew disappears in a blast of dirt and fire. The remaining gunners continue feeding shells into their breeches. Their arms move out of habit and memory. The battle has become mechanical. The fear that once filled their thoughts has been replaced by a heavy acceptance that this is the final stage of the war for them. Another explosion hits near the command post. A blast wave rolls through the field and knocks several men flat. They stand up again because standing is all they know. Smoke thickens to the point where shapes blur. Flames rise from shattered crates and spread along fallen wooden planks. The air grows hotter with each new impact. The men breathe through sleeves and scarves, trying to filter the dust and ash. The bombers complete one pass and circle for another. The gunners watch the silhouettes turn through the clouds. They fire again even though their barrels glow a deep red. Their shells arc upward with a steady rhythm, but the outcome never changes. The bombardment resumes. The ground shakes. Craters widen. One pit after another collapses inward. The field loses its shape and becomes a landscape of burning circles and scattered metal. When the final bomber disappears into the distance, the sky falls silent. Snow begins to drift through the smoke, settling on broken equipment and scorched earth. The surviving men move slowly among the ruins. Some search for injured comrades. Others sit on the rims of craters, staring at the sky with hollow exhaustion. They understand what the record books will later confirm. More than 80% of Flak crews never survived their service. The last crews standing look at their remaining guns and see the truth. Their positions were never built to withstand this kind of war. They fought in open air, with no shelter, no protection, and no chance to hide from the enemy above. Their duty continued until the very end, but the outcome was written the moment the bombers gained control of the sky. The war moves on, yet the field remains silent. The echoes of the guns fade, leaving only the memory of the men who stood uncovered beneath a sky that never stopped hunting them.